In this video, I want to talk about some of my experiences lately on different kinds of reselling apps. Now, as you guys may not know, that I have an online thrift store called heyredshop.com where you can buy vintage and secondhand goods. So I have like movies, home goods, clothing, and I started my business about 2 years ago, right at the beginning of 2020, as a way to challenge myself, as a way to force myself outside of my comfort zone, as a way to start my own stream of income, etc., etc. I'm not sure when I started to do this, but I really started to judge, and I say judge, and review other people who claim to be doing this as a form of a business. So it could be a brand, or it could be an actual company that they're claiming to be when they resell certain items. As you all probably know, a lot of people have started reselling their gently used goods as a way to create some extra income. For some people, it's just a few things in their closet that they want to get rid of to update their wardrobe or to make a little extra money, whatever it is. So it's very common nowadays for people to do that through places like Facebook Marketplace, Etsy, Depop, Poshmark, Letgo, etc. Every time that I join one of these reselling apps like eBay or Etsy, I always position myself as a company. So as Hey Red Shop LLC, which we are. We're registered in the state of Indiana. We were registered in the state of Virginia. It's all official paperwork, all that kind of stuff. When I see these different companies or really brands claiming to operate in a similar way or at a similar level, I sort of look at things with a more critical eye. A really quick side note: I never buy from vintage stores and consignment stores for my shop. The things that you see in my shop are things that I've sourced from non-profit thrift stores or like big chain stores. Like in Virginia, we have the Children's Hospital for the King's Daughters. You know, all of the proceeds from those sales goes towards that. You know, Goodwill, same thing. In the case of a vintage store or a consignment store, I know that the sales that they make go directly to them and causes that they support, and I want to support them personally. So sometimes I'll feature a small business on my website at heyredshop.com/blog, or I'll just buy something quietly and just show my support that way. But I would never buy from another small business owner just to resell in my shop. I feel like that's unethical, so it's not something that I do personally. But I know, other shops do. They see something really unique in another person's shop and they want to feature it and sell it in their own, and that's totally up to them, but it's not something that I do. So today I want to talk about broken dreams. So something that I knew way before I started my business is how there's no guarantee when you walk into a thrift store, you walk into a consignment store, that you'll find exactly what you're looking for. You have to kind of take it as you can get it. I have my opinions about the Depop app as a reseller that I'll be putting in a separate video. So I've been using it as a business owner, as a storefront, and I've also bought a few things there as well. So I bought some clothing items and I bought some home good items, and I have to say that my experience as a buyer has been not very good. A rant that's been on my spirit for a while, especially for brands and companies that operate on a professional level. They say this is their business. So the first thing that I notice is there's a lack of accountability. When you are operating as a business and you are serving your audience, you're serving your customers, you're serving your clients, you are accountable for the quality of that person's experience. So you control everything. So how fast are you to respond to a sale? How quickly do you get things packed and shipped out? How quickly do you answer customer service related questions? You know, you can control your customer's experience and determine whether or not that's a great experience or not so great experience. Guys, I placed an order for a clothing item and a home good item from a shop, because I'm not sure if they're like registered or if they just claim to be this shop, in Brooklyn, New York. I am in the state of Indiana, as you all know. They didn't process, and by process I mean print the labels to ship my item, for 10 days. And before that, of course, I emailed them to find out, you know, when would my item ship. A couple of days went by, no response. Again, I reached out, you know, to find out what was going on. Maybe they had something listed there that had sold in on another app or something. I'm like, it happens, you know, you try to prevent it. Didn't hear back from them for about 8 days. On the 8th day, I got a response back, and it was an apology for the delayed processing and that they would get right on it. 2 days later, it finally shipped. So all in all, I was essentially waiting about 2 weeks for my package to come in. Well, really, I was waiting about 2 weeks just for it to ship, and then a couple more days for it to get to me. So my experience at that point was not very good, not only because I wasn't hearing back from the seller and because I wasn't sure what was going on. By the time the package arrived, I was very excited to receive the package and get my items, which brings me to my second issue. My order, I understand that, you know, even though we have online businesses, we're trying to be as mindful as we can about the environment and reusing materials and things like that. But if you're operating on a professional level, there are certain things that I find unacceptable, and one of those things is using trash to pack an order. And that's essentially what the seller used to pack my order, was a bunch of miscellaneous pieces of paper that were used to fill the box that my order came in. And unfortunately, there were 2 glass items in the box. One of them was this. Now, I ordered 2 of these really tall, skinny vases. I'll insert a picture because I recently featured them in my favorite thrifted finds for myself, not for the shop. And not only was the box not packed well at all, it wasn't even packed tightly to make sure that the items wouldn't move around in travel, which resulted in one of the other vases having a chip at the top, which I forgave, and then this one being completely broken in half, as you can see. So completely and totally destroyed. Now with that came the reminder. I normally don't order home goods, specifically because this type of thing can happen, but I fell in love with them, you know, as one does, and I I remembered at that moment that when you buy vintage and secondhand goods, you're hoping that when they arrive and they're in the same condition, because there's no guarantee that you can find the pair or the twin or whatever anywhere. Because it's a vintage item and they don't make them anymore, it's possible that the item could continue to be reproduced, like the Polaroid camera has had a comeback and you have refurbished cameras coming out of the woodwork, etc. This particular item, I wasn't sure of when I first ordered it. So I had to do a ton of research online to see if I could find another one. And luckily I did find one in the same style, same height and everything on eBay. I was very, very lucky, but it reminded me as a seller how important it is that I take the time to make sure that each order is packed so carefully to make sure that it arrives in the same condition. Because if in this case I sent out a matching set of something and one of them broke, you know, even if I could make the situation right, refund the person their money, there's no guarantee that they'll be able to find a replacement for that item. That was an issue that I had. Number one, it being packed with trash, just like random bits of paper, random bits of plastic, and then they had written on the box that the item is fragile. I have to give you guys a pro tip, okay? This is a pro tip. Okay, because I've been doing this professionally for a little over 2 years. Just because you write on a box that there's something fragile inside doesn't mean that the courier that is shipping your item gives a crap. It essentially is just like, oh, that's nice. That doesn't mean that the courier is going to handle your package with care because you wrote on it that there's a fragile item inside. You have to pay for that. Again, brings us back to being a professional, knowing what your options are as a seller as far as shipping. If you want your items to be handled with extra care and you want them to know that there's something super fragile in it, you have to pay for that and you have to go through the courier in order to have that acknowledged. For example, if you wanted a signature delivery, something that in order for it to be delivered to the address has to have a signature on it from someone at that address. It's the same thing. It actually worked out in a way because I was able to come up with a lot of ideas for content from this experience, and that made, out of everything that happened, that reminded me of why I started my business in the first place. That part of it is the learning process and learning how to process these kinds of setbacks in a way that is motivating and energizing instead of like depleting is part of why I started my business. I ordered some wall sconces off of eBay. I love eBay now, by the way, which I'll talk about in another video, but I just had to say I love eBay. So I ordered some items from Depop, and they were metal and they're lighting fixtures, so they can be very fragile. The person that I ordered it from used a USPS box, but they had packed the items in newspaper. That is entirely acceptable to me because because I ordered two, the wall sconces themselves were wrapped in bubble wrap. And then inside the package was all of this newspaper. That's perfectly fine. Tearing apart magazines, using just random bits of paper and plastic just to fill up the box, I just think that's really unprofessional. So the second thing that came up, again, shopping for stuff on Depop, I was like, look, I'm trying to, support other individuals out here, new entrepreneurs. I'll try again. This dress, which brings me to another issue. Sellers not being completely transparent about the condition of their items. There are so many opportunities for you to be honest with your customers and clients. Photographs, video, and through your text descriptions. This dress was, the way it was described as the condition was perfect. Perfect condition. It is not. This is not perfect condition. This is not at all. Somebody with beginner level sewing experience put this together enough for someone to take photographs in it, and the pictures were edited enough that it completely removed all of the flaws. I got essentially. It would have cost much more for me to send this item back than it would for me to just take the L and be like, okay, they got me. Won't be making any other purchases from them ever again. And I'm not going to call them out about that, but that was really disappointing. As you guys can see, it would have been a nice kind of loose dress, a little, you know, taken in around the waist here. Would have been very nice. Stuff like this I tend to just take to like a Goodwill or Salvation Army. Things that I think I can't fix or would cost more to fix than is feasible, I'll just take it to a thrift store and just donate it there. But that was really disappointing, and it also reminded me how important to have accurate descriptions, video if you can, and photographs. Just be honest. If there's a tear or a rip in something and somebody is willing to put in some extra work to have it repaired because they love that piece so much, they're out there. You don't have to lie. You don't have to be dishonest or not lie exactly, but withhold certain truths in order to make a sale. So again, some good came out of it because it gave me so many ideas for content for my own social media. You guys know we're on Instagram and Pinterest, Facebook, and Google Maps and search. And it kind of forced me to think more, not positively, but think of a way to put a spin on the situation. And I really give credit to being an entrepreneur and thinking of ways that I can bounce back. So as y'all can see, I'm still wearing these hats. Yeah, still not quite there yet, but I will be eventually. If you guys haven't watched my last video, that's where I go on a whole rant about this just really disappointing haircut that I got. I'll figure it out. But anyways, I just wanted to say that as someone who sells vintage and secondhand and buys it, it's such a difficult place to be sometimes because I want to respond as a seller myself, you know. The resurgence and popularity of buying vintage and secondhand I think is great in a lot of ways because it should be the norm to buy secondhand rather than just solely relying on buying new. I know people personally in my life that don't understand why I started this business at all. They don't see the value of it. They have no idea how much enthusiasm there is for vintage and secondhand goods. And I just think that's kind of sad. I feel like the old stereotype about the tree huggers, the environmentalists or conservationists, I feel like has a lot of people reluctant to admit when they buy secondhand and vintage, because let me tell you guys something. When I go to the thrift store, you would be surprised about, I can't say about the people that are in the store because I don't see who comes in exactly, but there are some luxury cars in the parking lot. There are some of the year cars in the parking lot. I feel like we all need to address this stigma around buying secondhand and buying vintage clothes as though there's something wrong with it. There's something wrong with you, that you're cheap, because it's an investment to buy vintage and secondhand stuff because sometimes you can't test out something before you buy it, so you never know if when you get it home and you try it out that it'll work for you. But there's still a stigma. As popular as it is, and it has hit a peak the past, like, I want to say 5 to 7 years. I've been buying vintage and secondhand my whole life, so I've seen prices go up, and I don't blame that on the popularity. I blame that on the economy. And nothing gets cheaper, not utilities or anything. So I think there's much more accountability on sites like eBay, because eBay is like the grandfather of the reselling app industry, you know? And Depop is like the cool it girl, but that doesn't mean that it's the best option, depending on, you know, what type of items you're selling, what kind of audience you're trying to reach. I think there's a lot of different issues going on. But what I wanted to talk about today was just the fact that if you're claiming that reselling items, secondhand vintage goods are your business, be honest, be transparent, and do your very best. Each order that you pack should be a prime example for someone who has never bought anything from you before. It's a way to put your best foot forward to show that you care about the customer, that you care about their experience, and that you want them to come back. Because based on the condition that this item arrived in, which besides of the overall condition, when I opened the bag, it smelled like cigarette smoke and body odor. Guys, that is not okay. It is not okay to sell someone clothes that literally smell like they just came off somebody's back. Like they took them off, put them in this bag, and then shipped it to me. I was heated. I was so heated. That's not okay. Especially if you say that you're operating this as a business, packing your orders with trash and claiming to be eco-friendly, which it's not. That's very unsanitary. Like, the newspaper I think is fine because, you know, people throw away so much of their newspaper all the time. Typically newspapers are covered, and I don't have an issue with that. The fact that it looks like somebody's wastebasket essentially went into my order, and then to get something like this that smelt like a human being had just worn it. I was so heated. I was like, this is not appropriate. This is not okay. And I wanted to talk about it. I was like, yes, I sell vintage and secondhand goods, but I also buy it for myself and for my own purposes. And I would never want anybody to have these types of experiences. So I just want to say, you guys be vigilant out there. Ask the seller as many questions as possible, if not just to cover yourself when you're especially making purchases online. Something like this where it would cost more for me to send it back and get a refund than it would be worth to me. You know, I would hate to put somebody else in that position. So I just say, have some pride. Oh my gosh. That was a whole mess. Just have some pride about your work and what you're affecting people's day. You know, you're giving them a product that they're expecting it to be in a certain condition and to receive it in a certain way. And it was just a whole mess. It was a whole mess. And if you guys have had similar experiences, please let me know. I would love to hear about it in the comments below, because these are just the two latest. These are just the two latest. And really, this last one was enough to put me off the Depop app entirely as a buyer. So I don't use it for that purposes. I took everything off of my storefront there. Me and Depop are not really vibing right now, and I'll talk about it more in my next video, but I know you guys have some stories. And I don't mean, you know, get y'all excited or anything like that, but I would love to hear about some of these stories, you know, because we're all in this together. I know that there's a tribe of people that buy vintage and buy secondhand that can relate to this story, so I just wanted to share it here. And yeah, thank you all for spending your time with me today. I really appreciate it. Oh yeah, and thank you guys for sharing. And I don't know what is going on, but I've still been getting so many orders. Thank you so much. And again, if I get enough orders that I can say, packing 100 orders, I'll definitely record that. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for being here. And thank you so much for the support. And I'll see you guys next time.